decide the legality of abortion until there is a firm definition that's widely accepted of when life starts. Because, I mean, if a woman's giving birth and the doctor takes out the baby and it's there in his arms and he slits its throat,
that's murder.
That's murder.
Yeah.
But I mean, a couple weeks,
when do you draw the line?
Exactly. A few months earlier, and the doctor could have ended that life, and it would have been a standard procedure.
And not ended, I mean, ended the life is a really nice term, but ripped out, scissored the head open. I mean, we're not injecting them with a lethal toxin.
Yeah.
Murdering them. Like,
we're ripping them apart.
At 12 weeks or younger, they can suction the baby out, which is pretty gross.
Yeah.
After 12 weeks, they have to, like they said, that's when they have to cut it apart and take it out piece by piece. Anything past 12 weeks, they had to start cutting it apart.
That's still,
It's not so much the size of the baby, it's that the placenta has really firmly gripped onto the uterus, and so they have to scrape, because if they use a suction, it will leave pieces of it behind, and you could bleed to death.
Okay.
It's very vascular. So it's not that the baby is large. Even at 12 weeks, they're still quite small.
The main point of this long article was that it's pretty clear that babies can feel at a very basic, early level, pretty early on, like 8 weeks they're saying, they can still respond to some like poke, poke, poke. By 26 weeks they're feeling human conscious pain, maybe not full, even after it's been born, it still takes a while to develop. Your brain's developing for years and years and years.
still developing.
But those first 2 months are obviously pretty critical. After birth, that's one of the things that sets us apart from animals, is that we are still not done cooking. We're not out of the oven, even once we're out of the oven. That was pretty good. Yeah, so it's not just a matter of at what point do you call this a human being. And personally, I have a problem with labeling a cluster of cells a human being. And I'm not saying, like, weeks along the line, this is, oh, it's just a cluster of cells. It looks like a baby alien. And that's not I really, human life does not begin at conception, I would say, as far as a being. But it's still a human. And we're never going to settle this just on, well, at what point is this a human? Well, it's a human as a sperm. It's a human as protein. And it's sure as hell a human at 16 weeks, but when do we start legally? Yeah.
What about, like, the definition of maybe killing? Like, you're preventing a life from being born. You can't get around that. You may not be killing a human being, but you're preventing one from being born. As if we cannot define it as killing a human being when it's in the fetus, if we can, because it's, like you said, maybe only a cluster of cells, well then legally it might be fine.
Like, you know, morally, someone thinks that it's perfectly fine to ritually sacrifice someone. Legally, that is wrong, and if they are caught, you can bet that they are definitely going to jail for killing that person to, you know, whatever deity or idea that they worship. I mean, so.
But the problem with that is this definitely is they don't classify it as murder yet. It's not classified
Exactly,
as
and that's
murder.
why it's. I mean, I think one day there's a chance it could be illegal, because I think that it is possible that, you know, one day maybe we will say, yeah, that is a life in there. And murder, we might define murder as taking away a life. So I think, I mean, pro-choice, you know, really when it comes down to it, I think is pro-abortion.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of people who will say, you know, I'm not pro-abortion, I'm pro-choice. Because I personally don't believe in abortion.
Particularly in religious communities.
Yeah.
No, I'm not pro-abortion. I just think people should have abortions if they want them.
It's like, you know.
I'll say I'm pro-abortion.
Yeah.
It's not like,
It's
I
like
think
when you're trying to avoid a witch hunt in a church, and, you know, like someone's Catholic, if they're pro-choice, they're like, you know, yeah, I'm Catholic, I'm against abortion, but I mean, it can be legal.
I'm supposed to believe that, you know, it's supposed to say that I'm not pro-choice, but, like, there's definitely certain things that I think if it's a hostile environment being born into, like basically going back to what everyone said, that it's not, I don't know, that it should be up to you, is really what I have to say about it. There is no set legal limit right now about like when you cannot have an abortion in the US. Is there a week, a certain amount?
It's, forgive me if I'm wrong on this, it's state by state.
Okay.
I think Roe v. Wade allows for a fair bit of regulation. And so there's laws like informed consent, which basically is just, all right, well, I'm legally obligated to give you this packet, which, will let you know about how far along your baby is, see in 24 hours. There's stuff like that. And in that voice too.
But just
most doctors in the U.S. will not perform.
Then that's what I was gonna bring that up too, because
It's also up
I
to
don't
a lot
believe
of
in.
doctors.
I believe in that. There
There's-
should be a small window because if you're making that decision, you should know you're making that decision. So they should give a very small. Once you find it, 'cause you should find out within 5 weeks. She says so. Maybe make it only a month that you. And if you can't decide in that month, then you should definitely keep the baby if you can't make a decision in that amount of time, or maybe even less than
Drawing
that.
the line there again.
What point is this?
Yeah, that's the
a living
living
human
human
soul?
being.
At what point is this a living human being? Because that's kind of the distinction. Well, at what point does this go from just a material mass of cells to this transcendent, powerful human being? There could be a human soul that we could someday identify. Well, okay, at 6 weeks he gets a soul. But it's going to perturb us for probably forever because there is no magical line between conception. Again, I'm sorry to disclude here, but we're assuming that it's at some point after conception that it should be regulated. There's not going to be a magical point where it's just, like, oh, at 12 weeks he's still feels. Oh, 13 weeks he's got a top hat on and he's dancing. It's a steady progression to becoming a living person that can function on their own. And then when you see a late-term abortion, when you see a picture of a late-term abortion, that's a baby.
That's sickening.
It's a little bit, but it's horrifying.
Well, I think
And
Keith,
it's
you
gonna-
said something earlier that really showed that. You said, I find it hard pressed to look at a clump of cells and say that's a human being.
Yeah.
There's no point where it's like clump of cells, clump of cells, clump of cells. It has toes and
Exactly,
fingers.
yeah.
And look at that there.
It's
I
a
mean,
steady
yeah.
progression.
Exactly.
And I think it bothers people just how physiologically human, even in early, early, like 8 weeks. It's got most of the features already. Physiologically, it's not mentally capable of anything, but it can still respond to stimulus, and it just bothers us that it might not be a human being, but it's definitely human.
Well, that's like, birth is just the easy magical line we have. I mean, because some women will have, there will be preemies born, and it's at that, it might be a preemie born that could have been aborted maybe, but it's out of the mom. It is a baby now.
One article said, well, even if we were to make it illegal, women would still do it. Maybe not a lot, but
Illegally.
yes, illegally, a fair amount would still do it.
Making murder illegal. People still go around murdering.
Yes, I know,
And they
I'm
do it in a
saying-
really dangerous way.
I think the thing that we're never going to get over, perhaps ever, is the definition of a human being.
Who are we to decide that? Because we're all human beings, and we've all been born. So it's like we never. It's just really hard to think because it's not you.
It's like,
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like we can talk about politics and we can talk about religion, because it directly affects us. But the fact of the matter is, none of us will ever be aborted.
that's the argument a lot of people see on Science and March for Life. Did you notice that everyone who's for abortion has already been born?
So this is a Gallup poll on Americans' overall position on abortion. So with respect to the abortion issue, would you consider yourself pro-choice or pro-life? And in the 1996, 33% of people considered themselves to be pro-life. 56 considered themselves to be pro-choice. So a pretty solid majority of people consider themselves to be pro-choice. And then we see a steady growth of pro-life, a steady decline of pro-choice, until recently in 2008, 2009,
It's reversed.
it's reversed, but only by a small margin. I mean, you can see that there. See, that's a small margin.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But the point is, it's pretty damn close now. It's not, there is no overwhelming majority in either way, and it goes on to talk about who the people are changing their minds. It's conservatives, it's moderates, it's not, Democrats are not changing their minds on this. It's moderate Republicans, moderate independents, who have been swayed to the pro-life cause, and I think that's some pretty solid momentum in the direction. So, yeah.
To die some sort of weird.